Story 1. She has been married 4 times, and her children do not speak to her. I got lucky. Story 2. My first love taught me how to love my wife by showing that love means honoring and respecting the relationship as a whole and valuing the person who sustains it every day. She taught me this by not doing those things and by making their absence obvious in the final days of our relationship. I am glad to have had her. I fondly remember the feelings she gave me. I am eternally grateful that she is gone and my wife is here. Story 3. It would be an absolute nightmare. I am very happy to be with my partner. Story 4. I am sorry, original poster. If it is any consolation, your mental image of them is not what the reality would have been. Story 5. My current wife knows of and has met my first love. I am about 308,960,280% better with my current wife than I would have been. I only tell my wife it is about 287,962% better. I do not want her too comfortable. Seriously, I think of the time in the past but definitely do not want that now. It is like remembering a fun time when you were 20 but absolutely never wanting to be 20 again. Story 6. I sometimes think about past partners but never in that way. More just wondering if they are okay because most of them were nice people I used to care about. Story 7. There is no point in thinking that because those thoughts are fictional, the mind creates an idealized scenario. Stop dwelling on what could have been and focus on what is in front of you. Story 8. Oh, for sure. I thank my lucky stars daily that I did not end up with her. That would have been a nightmare. Story 9. I guess I am lucky that the first girl I really fell for is the one I am still married to. No regrets. Story 10. Absolutely not. I did everything I could for her while we were together, and she was unfaithful to me. Story 11. My first impression was from Facebook. She is a nice person, married well, and has good-looking children. She still looks exceptionally beautiful and has aged very well. The second person looks like a drug addict. I would walk past if I saw her on the streets. I do not think much about either. I do not live in the past. I am happy where I am. The question would be, how would things be different if I were not with my current partner? That is a much scarier thought. Story 12. It's weird. I've literally just mentioned this in the Am I Overreacting subreddit. But yes, I do. We were very young, got together at 11 years old, split at 16. The reason was her parents thought us being together would limit her opportunities after leaving school, like she turned down university places too far away or she had considered the Navy. If we were together, her parents thought that would mean she wouldn't take those opportunities to stay with me. We had a conversation 6 years later. I was with my current partner then and expecting our first child. My ex explained her parents pressured her into separating. She said she had always loved me and still thought about me. We were both in the same position, really, both with new people. Our time had passed. Ironically, she didn't take those opportunities because she had stayed around holding out hope we'd get back together. Out of respect for our current partners, we've not been in contact since. I hear updates every now and then as we have mutual friends. By all accounts, she is happy, married, has 4 children, and a nice house. I am happy as well. I love my partner, our children, and my life. Every now and then, I do think about her and how different things would have been if she had stood up to her parents. Story 13. My first serious girlfriend was and still is a train wreck. We would either be divorced or still painfully married because it is the right thing to do. If I am entirely vulnerable, part of me wonders what it would be like to have children without genetic disease. 2 of my 3 children have cystic fibrosis, which was really scary and stressful when they were very young. There were times when I was trying to process that I might live longer than my children. In those times, I wondered what it would be like to have lower maintenance children, but then I remember all that stress would be taken up by a high maintenance wife. Fortunately, now with medical advances in treatment, cystic fibrosis is more manageable and a little less scary and stressful. Story 14. Sometimes I am glad I dodged the bullet. She was crazy and I did not see it at the time. Story 15. I think of her fairly often, perhaps every 6 months or so. The context is that she basically disappeared from the face of the earth. I honestly just wonder what happened to her. I I hope she is very happy and has had a great life. For reference, she was 15 or 16 the last time I saw her. Story 16. No, I do not think about my exes much at all. There were reasons they did not work out, and there are even more reasons my spouse and I did. I do not hold anything against them, and I do not have any particular regrets. Story 17. My first love was in 7th and 8th grade. My first serious love, I married her. I sometimes wonder how things would have gone with some crushes, but I am okay where I am. Story 18. No. My mind is the kind that does not dwell on the past. The past is done. It is only today and the future that count. That is just the way my mind works. Story 19. I met her when we were both still too young to be in a long-term relationship. Or at least I didn't know what I wanted out of life or a relationship, and I certainly didn't know how to be a good partner. While I learned a lot about both, I still had much more to learn. She started to pressure me into thinking long-term, which made me realize I wasn't ready. It was a pretty heart-rending goodbye. We stayed in touch for a while. I know she eventually got married and had some children. I sometimes still wonder about what could have been. I think there was a chance we could have made it work. But looking back at my journey since then, I'm very thankful for all that I've learned. I've met many people who taught me initially about what I didn't want from a relationship. Later, I learned a lot about how to care for others. I have since met a wonderful woman, and we have been married for more than a decade now, and I'm still learning. Story 20. It would be different, but not better. Story 21. The only version of my life I want to think about is the one with my children in it. They drive me crazy and take all my energy, but they are my reason for sticking around. Story 22. I think of how glad I am that I did not marry her and how much wider my horizons became after we broke up. Story 23. I do not constantly think about it, but I do marvel at how incredibly lucky I am to be with the woman I am now. If I were still with the girl I first fell in love with, my life would be chaotic, crazy, and unfulfilling. The fact that I am who I am with now is just amazing to me. She is the perfect partner for me, and I cannot even imagine how difficult my life would be if I were still with my first love, who started using drugs and was with many other people. It is strange how something like that can be both the worst and the best thing that has happened to you in your life. I am very grateful that it happened. Story 24. Not my first love, no, but I reached a point in my life where I had to choose between settling down with my future wife or a girl who was more fun and free-spirited. I often look back and wonder how different my life would have been if I had chosen the other girl. This choice has loomed over me, not because my wife is not great, but because it was such a pivotal moment in my life. It would have loomed over me just as much if I had made the other choice. Story 25. Hey, original poster. 48-year-old married father of 2 in the United Kingdom here. No, not at all, because right in front of me there is the absolute stunning wife who has had 2 of my children and somehow gets sexier every day. That is a no from me, friend. Story 26. I was reading the subject line when my husband cut me off with a somewhat disgusted, "No." Laugh out loud. Story 27. I am the first love that many married men contact. I can tell you that they do, in fact, delude themselves into thinking everything would be different. We message on social media for a bit, maybe have a phone call or exchange some emails, and slowly it becomes clear that this man is unhappy and has been fixated on me, his high school fantasy, for decades. But it is just a fantasy. I have had conservatives call me thinking we were the perfect match. I cannot stand to talk to a conservative for longer than 5 minutes, and only then if I am under duress. I have had religious, church-going men call despite the fact that I am atheist. I cannot remember all the men I dated in high school who, out of the blue, suddenly decided, against all odds, that I was the one after all. Why? Because I can be anybody inside their heads. They can ignore all the annoying real parts of me that do not fit into their fantasies. Another reason is that I was a bit of a manic pixie dream girl in my youth, so they think I am still out there making life magical. Sensible men in happy marriages do not seek me out. If our paths cross, they are not secretive or dramatic about it. It is just this subset of men who are not wise enough to realize that someone you dated briefly in high school was just a fantasy and not the solution to all your problems. Story 28. She came out during college and eventually married a woman. I do not think it would have worked out well for either of us. I do think about one of my other post-college girlfriends and believe it could have worked out if I had been more mature. Story 29. Yes, all the time. I feel lucky that I married my wife and not her, my first girlfriend, or any other girlfriend. Everything happens for a reason. It may sound corny, but it is true. Thinking about what might have been is an impossible road to nowhere. Look forward to a bright and happy future that you control. Story 30. I think about my first girlfriend sometimes and how it would have been different, mostly in bad ways. My wife makes me happy in many ways that my first girlfriend would not. She loves more openly and freely, is not commitment phobic, is more conventionally attractive, and is more sexually active. My first girlfriend never got married, and no other man could get through her emotional walls either. My wife basically has nothing to worry about. Story 31. I bumped into her about a month ago at a random coffee shop. She lives in another state. We talked for about 15 minutes to catch up. She is married now and has a baby girl. I am very happy for her. She said she does not think we were wrong for each other, just that we met at the wrong time. I think that is probably true, but it does not make me wish things were different. I am glad she is happy, and I am happier than I could imagine with a woman who loves me deeply. Story 32. Original poster. You may enjoy this poem. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Story 33. Yes, simply being dedicated to your current marriage because it is better is a dangerous reason. What happens when your current marriage becomes difficult or on the rocks? That first love will look a lot better. Personally, I do miss my first love sometimes, but what I really miss is that time in my life. There are two thoughts here. 1. My feelings for my first love are based on nostalgia and the perspective of myself as a teenager. 2. I made vows with my wife and I am committed even if it feels bad at times. Would things be better if I married my first love? Maybe. Who knows? Why does it matter? Anyone who gets married because of feelings will end a marriage because of feelings. It is not a good reason to do either, in my opinion. Story 34. I used to think about past loves when I was younger, but now that I have found real love, I do not think about other people in a significant way. I am friends with some of them on social media, and so is my wife. I enjoy seeing them happy and enjoying life. However, our relationships do not really affect me deeply. Story 35. She always wanted to marry someone in the military, so she could continue living her military brat life into adulthood. I was not in the military, so it would have never led to marriage. She also had mental health issues I did not want to deal with. She met a sailor and then constantly updated her social media about being a proud dependent and living the life of a sailor's wife. I have nothing for her, so I was indifferent in hindsight. Story 36. Would have ended up divorced. We did not have the same long-term goals, and while I was willing to compromise, she was not. Life for me is very good and has been for many years. I have been happily married for 33 years, own our home outright, have no debt, travel often, and have money in the bank. Story 37. Short answer. No. My wife was ultimately a much better choice, and I would not want to replace what we have with anyone. Story 38. My first love was a neighbor girl who came from a broken home. She was smart and full of compassion. Things would have been very different with her. My love for her was innocent, and I never found out if she felt the same for me. Her loyalty was to family, though, and that led to a lot of trauma. She is a different woman now than the girl I knew. She was my first sexual partner and first girlfriend. Things would have been very different. She was the valedictorian of my high school and admitted that I helped her get through advanced placement physics. We had very different political and religious ideologies. I would argue our connection was more intellectual and physical than based on shared interests. If I had not ended things with her, I feel I would not have learned the lessons I did, and I would not be the man I am today. I might have been filled with guilt and shame, wondering what could have been. My first wife and I married too soon. We did not even take time to get to know each other. Looking back, I suppose I was blinded by loneliness, and she by a desire to have children after ending things for the second time with her ex-husband. We did okay in our marriage, like best friends who lived together and occasionally had sex. I now know she was never attracted to me. She even told me that seeing me the day I graduated basic training, how skinny I was in my muscle tone, gave her feelings she had not had for many years, but never before with me. Our relationship ended because we were completely different people with different hobbies and interests, as well as a sex life that had become a chore primarily for baby-making rather than attraction and love. After our divorce, she remarried her ex-husband, making it her third time back with him. I am happy for her. We both would have been miserable if we had stayed together. Being with my wife now makes me the happiest I have ever been, and I am glad I chose the path that brought me to her. I am glad things are not different. Story 39. Did no one here marry their first love? We are still happy together and could not imagine being with anyone else. Story 40. My first love I had to let go after the engagement but before the marriage. I wasn't ready for marriage yet. It would take me another 15 years before I matured enough to make the lifelong commitment to another person. She obviously did not wait and went on with her own life. Now we are both much happier. She was a good woman, and I still think of her and what might have been if I had met her when I was in a better place in life. Story 41. I daydream about alternate versions of my life often, but it is usually not filled with intense longing for things to have been different. It is more of a quiet fascination. My wife is a special person and one of the few people in the world who truly understands and appreciates me for who I am. Of course, I sometimes fantasize about my high school crush and similar thoughts, but no part of me really wishes for things to be different. Story 42. I am still married to my first love, so I do not have to answer this question. Story 43. Yeah, I do, but it's extremely complicated because she died 26 years ago. The relationship didn't run its course and blossom, then fade away like many relationships do. It ended abruptly when it was at its peak for me. The circumstances around it are difficult to handle because she committed suicide. I occasionally go back there and engage with it, but it can be intense to do that. My view on it is complex, but broadly, it's hard not to look at my wife and especially my young son and think all of it had to happen for you to be here, and for all of us to be here. Would I change it if I could? If that means my son ceasing to exist, no. Never. I have written things about it and spoken some of them as poems on a video channel. I've never shared them before, but if it's interesting to you, enjoy. This verse is called The Box. Story 44. Rarely. However, to acknowledge it, it would have been a mess. She was fun, but she is not the most responsible individual. Story 45. I think my husband is the love of my life. There is a reason that person is an ex. Story 46. I let go of my first love decades ago, and my wife knew all about her when we started dating. We both casually keep tabs on my first love, as she ended up marrying a somewhat famous actor who sometimes appears in tabloids. We send each other links when she appears somewhere. Story 47. I still think about her because we are still together. Married more than 30 years. Story 48. My first? No. There were a couple along the way that come to mind every once in a while, but not enough to make me doubt my current marriage and life. Story 49. I'm not married, but I do think about my first love, because that was a wonderful time in my life. She was a big part of my college experience. I love that time and think about it often. However, our relationship was mostly good, but it ended for a reason. I don't really think about what if we were still together. I feel like if I still thought that way about any past relationship, I wouldn't feel comfortable getting married. I would be pursuing the past instead. Story 50. She has not only ruined her life but also the lives of the children she keeps having and abandoning. Story 51. I was unwise. She is better off now. I do not want to change anything. Story 52. Sometimes, but not in a good way. I am extremely grateful and fortunate to be with my wife. Story 53. I think about it from her perspective. Good for her in trashing me, whatever her reasons were. Not that I did anything wrong, but I used that to move my life forward. I am doing great. Story 54. Yes, especially when she is a well-known singer. It is not like I can avoid seeing her. We had an on-again, off-again relationship for years. The wild part is, when she smiles or laughs, I vividly remember the moments when I experienced that smile and laugh. The last time I actually talked to her, she reminded me of a party she invited me to about a year after we broke up. I was still cool with her family. She and her new boyfriend were getting ready to move out of state, and she told me, "If you had shown up to the party and told me you still loved me like I still loved you, I would have never left with him. Don't get me wrong. I love my wife. She is my ace. She gave me two wonderful kids, and she supports me fully. But sometimes, I wonder how life would have been if I had stopped being stubborn and gone to my ex's party that day and told her how I felt." Story 55. Pretty much every day, but that was about 38 years ago. I don't know how everything would be different. I just wish I had been different. Story 56. I occasionally think about my first love. We are still friends on Facebook, even though we have not spoken since our breakup nearly 14 years ago. I sometimes check to see how her life has progressed compared to mine. I have often wondered what my life would be like if we were together and even dreamed of being with her again. But in hindsight, I realize we had completely different interests, and the relationship would not have worked out in the long run. I do miss the sheer passion I felt for her, as that is something I have not experienced in any of my relationships since. My first kiss with her was by far the most memorable, and I still remember the butterflies I felt that day. If I could give up a year of my life to go back to that day just to experience that feeling again, I probably would. Story 57. Yes, we would not have made it long-term, different life goals. But there are times, usually when I am driving alone at night, that I think fondly of my time with her and wish I could relive the experience. I also think the same thing about the woman my wife was when we were first married. Story 58. Sure, it is nice to reminisce and fantasize. It does not hurt that she was the only other woman I truly loved. Not only was it a 9 out of 10 experience, but I am so lucky it was as great as it was and she was as great as she was. She slingshot me on a new trajectory, and I shudder to think about what my love life would have been without her. Messy ending, but so worth it. Story 59. Nothing would be different because I married her. Story 60. Yes, even though it was and would have become an even bigger train wreck. It is irrational and illogical, but it just happens. I have been married 25 years and dated my ex for 2 years prior to that. I got a random private message on Facebook, which I only check a few times a year, and only noticed I had a message because I wanted to look for something on Marketplace. There was no text, just a link to a music video for Alanis Morissette, you know what song, 28 years later. We are not Facebook friends, and I have not spoken to her since we split. I looked back and had several other messages from her recently. I could not help myself. I snooped a bit, and I am glad I did not stay. Anyhow, since then, I have been thinking about her, thinking about what might have been a sort of butterfly effect scenario. What if I had made different decisions in life based on my partner? My wife is the best and seemingly the only good thing in my life at times. Many other things have been a disaster, however, and I wonder if with that influence I would have made different, better decisions. I would not trade it for the world, but like most people, if I had the opportunity to go back, I would do a lot differently, but with my wife. I have those shower thoughts about where I would go back to if I could and how I would meet my wife again if I was not in the situation where we met. Nonsense, but when you are down and dealing with a lot, your mind wanders. Story 61. No, and that sort of goes for all the relationships I had with women until I met my wife. I have had a few where she split from me, but most I would say were me splitting from her. I don't really think of myself getting back with them or having some fanciful relationship. I do, however, bump into them from time to time, or maybe someone asks a question where I just poke around on social media out of pure curiosity, but that's about it. Now, thinking about it today with this question, those other women in my life gave me the experience to be with my wife, so to speak. I learned from them what worked and didn't work and subsequently grew as a result to be a man my wife could enjoy forever, well, at least until our clocks run out, so to speak. Likely why a lot of times when a couple breaks up after a long-term relationship, it doesn't feel like that long before they split and marry someone else. All things take practice, and during our 20s we often grow the most as well. Story 62. She was in an accident and was paralyzed from the waist down shortly after leaving for college. Yes, I think about her. Story 63. Do I think about her sometimes? Sure, who doesn't look back at being 18 and in love for the first time? It was a magical feeling, and thinking back on it still brings a smile to my face. Do I wish we had ended up staying together and getting married? No, absolutely not. Nothing against her. But she and I had different wants, interests, and life goals. As 18-year-olds in college, our relationship worked. As adults in the real world, we would have been totally unsuitable for each other. Story 64. Haha. Good try, Margaret. But I know you know my account name. Story 65. Occasionally. While there were good times, my thoughts mostly focus on how much I would have missed out on if I had kept trying to make a failing relationship work. I met my now wife soon after leaving that sinking ship and could not be happier with where I landed. Story 66. Who are you hoping still thinks about you in his married life? Because girl, I promise you he isn't secretly pining for you while he lies next to his wife. What Taylor Swift song has you thinking he could be? Story 67. I am not married, but I am pretty sure that relationship would have ended badly. I still wonder how she is doing. Story 68. My father always did. He realized that he settled for my mother because he could not have the one that got away. Considering how abusive he is, she is a very lucky woman. Story 69. No, because I see her every time I go into Walmart. One time, she said to me that I was the best thing in her life. I told her that is what she gets for listening to her family and friends. She knows I did something right with my life. She is stuck working at Walmart part-time so they do not take away her government assistance. Story 70. Yes, I do. Everyone does. People who say they don't are sanctimonious. But the thing is, if I chose a different path and married that other woman, we would just have a different set of issues. Because we are both humans. We all make mistakes, we all get on each other's nerves. The path not taken simply leads to a different set of circumstances that still involve two humans. So yes, we all think about it, but we do not dwell on it. As many have said already, it may have been better, it may have been worse, but in any circumstance it would have still been work. Story 71. Sometimes, but then I realize that I would be the same, so it does not really matter. Story 72. I think about all of my serious relationships and how I have grown and matured from each one to become the best version of myself for my partner. Story 73. Every time I remember her, I feel relieved because I dodged a bullet. Story 74. I do occasionally, but there is absolutely no way my life would have been better with that crazy person. Story 75. It has never occurred to me to think of this. I think of her from time to time, wondering how she is and what she is doing. But no, marrying her would have meant so much life just not taking place that I cannot imagine not having in my life and memories. She is not a factor in my emotional life anymore. Life happens. Your mind finds better things to care about and worry about. Greater loves, better problems. Story 76. I have regrets about losing one woman. It might have worked with her for a few years, but not the way it has worked with my spouse of 42 years. Story 77. I learned that my first love was and is terrible at having difficult conversations. When I was crushing hard on her, I did not know her parents were pushing her to marry another man she had stopped dating. She is the one that got away, but it would have been awful to be with her. Even today, we are distant friends. She does not know how to discuss uncomfortable topics. It is annoying. Story 78. She became very devoted to Jesus and would have taken me to church every Sunday. Story 79. I used to, but it is not fair to my wife of almost 30 years. It is a waste of time, and time is precious. Story 80. Not really. I knew some cool women back in my day, but my wife is just the best. I often think about how I cannot go back in time and change anything before my second child's conception, or I might delete them from history. The third child is pretty young, so I might not notice if she... Wait a second, was the third one a boy? Oh dear. Story 81. Ultimately, making or not making choices leads to the same conclusion. Story 82. No. She was terrible. So was I. It is best left in the past. Story 83. Sometimes I think about previous relationships. I never dwell on them too long because I quickly move from the positive moments to the reasons I ended the relationship or the ways my current partner has improved. Story 84. I got the blessing of briefly knowing my first love again in my early 30s as a friend, and it did not make me long for the old days at all. Story 85. I only think about her in the context of, holy crap, some guy married her narcissistic ass. Poor guy. Story 86. My wife and I have talked openly about our exes. My ex's brother was chosen to be our wedding photographer but had to drop out 2 weeks before the wedding for a reason I can't even remember. I am acquaintances with most of my exes, I think. From time to time, my thoughts drift back to them. I don't really know how things could have gone differently than they did. That's the funny thing about not regretting the person you marry. My wife and I don't have many rules for each other to follow. That is not to say there is nothing that could tear us apart. There just has not been a need to establish rules and boundaries when we are best friends and enjoy being with each other. That is pretty much why we got married. If you get it, you get it. I really can't picture what life would be like if my wife and any of my exes were still together. In the time I was with them, the future was very limited, obviously. Story 87. Not at all. I hadn't even given her a thought until I saw this topic in the subreddit. She did not like my brother who has autism. When you're 14, you don't take that into consideration. As an adult, she would have been kicked to the streets. Her ex also called me to gaslight me and threatened to beat me because I was talking to her cousin in a friendly manner while she was with him. I'm fairly certain she was seeing him behind my back while we were together as well. In hindsight, I'm almost 100% certain that her accusing me of cheating while I was faithful was projection. She was talking to other people and messing around behind my back. I had an awkward time when she was in my driver's education class and wanted to come back to me. It was even more awkward when she transferred to my school and was in a class with me. I think she actually dropped out of high school because she did not even walk at graduation. I don't know what she does now. All I know is that I absolutely dodged a bullet with her. I'm certain I would have become a deadbeat if I stayed with her, because that was exactly what she was. My brother ran into her back in my hometown and told me she looks very unwell. That was 16 years ago when I dated her. Again, I absolutely dodged a bullet. I'm in my 30s now, married, and have a child. My wife is absolutely amazing. Story 88. I'm happily married. Occasionally, my former partner crosses my mind. It's hard to forget someone completely. I made mistakes and have many regrets. However, I learned from them and applied those life lessons to my current marriage and love. I have never wished to be back with my former partner, but I do wish I had handled things better with them. Story 89. Oh, I sure do. The thought about how everything would be different is quickly followed by me wondering what more than 20 years with a difficult woman would have been like. Then I quickly snap back to attention and think, phew, dodged that one. Story 90. I am gay, and I am fortunate that my first ex-boyfriend and I ended on good terms. We were both young, 20 years old and 21 years old, and there was no realistic way that relationship would have been sustainable long-term. We sat down one day and had the conversation, deciding we worked better as friends. It hurt deeply at the time, but I got over it quickly because I had the healthy closure I needed to move on. Story 91. Yes. 40 years later, she is still beautiful and an amazing person. Story 92. I'm still good friends with the woman I was with before my wife. We split up due to circumstances, and we both agreed that if that had not happened, we are both pretty confident it would have gone the distance. Have I thought about it? Sure. Do I think about it? Not really. Do I think about her? Sure. She lives a few thousand miles away on the other side of the country now, married with a child and a pug. We talk a lot on voice chat and recently played a game together on a clan server for about 2 weeks when it was popular. Funny enough, I met her in college and introduced her to my Counter-Strike Source clan. Then I kind of disappeared from the clan since I was into other things. We dated, split up, lost touch for a while, and during that time she joined and became a prominent member. Later, I reconnected with the clan as it expanded into a wider community, and now we are both members in prominent standing. The fact that we dated seriously is well known within the clan, and we have fun with it sometimes. When new people join who seem like they will stay long-term, we let it slip that we used to date and then act like it ended badly with bad blood. Sometimes other members mention it to new people and suggest asking about it, and whoever they ask says a bunch of salacious things about the other. I definitely still have a lot of love for her, but over time and through the solidified friendship within the clan, it is more of a familial bond. Honestly, with how dating seems nowadays, I am in my late 30s, the woman in question is in her mid-30s, and we were together about 15 years ago. If something happened to our respective spouses, I would probably call her up. Story 93, not really. She died of an overdose. I doubt I could even be around her, even if I wasn't married. I will also admit that she was always willing to listen to my problems and meet up with me, even a decade after we broke up. I have to admit that she would do anything for me, and sadly, I allowed it. Looking back, I feel like I used her, and it makes me feel terrible. I did a lot of selfish things after we broke up when I was around 16, but she was always there for me until she died in my mid-20s. Story 94. I ran into the ex who completely broke my heart recently for the first time in decades. She looked good. She was either a lesbian or bisexual because she was with her girlfriend. I felt nothing and am still madly in love with my wife of 15 years. My ex and I were very toxic. I was emotionally stunted, borderline isolated, and she had significant trauma at the time, so it would have ended badly if we had stayed together. Story 95. I am not married, and I have no ill wishes toward the woman, but I would never want to be with her again, even if the world depended on it. Story 96. From time to time, she crossed my mind, but last year I ran into her after 10 years. We talked for an hour, and all I wanted to do was leave because I did not like the person she had become at all. She no longer crosses my mind, even though she has tried to reconnect. Story 97. Absolutely not. The only thought is why I was so foolish back then. Story 98. Sometimes I think about her. Looking back, I realize that I dodged a bullet, and it makes me even more grateful for my wonderful wife. Story 99. I think about all of the women I have loved all the time. I never wondered what if until my son was killed. Story 100. I still think about the mistakes and pain I caused my first love. I still punish myself for them. 15 years later, I have stopped dating because I cannot bear hurting good men anymore. Story 101. My first girlfriend was all right until she cheated on me. We eventually became somewhat friends again since we are part of the same group of high school friends, but I absolutely do not think of her in that way anymore. After I moved on from that relationship, I saw her like a brother. If we had stayed together, we would have been a very unhappy couple or divorced. Story 102. Married my first love. It has worked out well. I do not know the ending yet, but it has been a fantastic ride. Story 103. I'm still friends with my first love. She is happily married and has a beautiful family. I have been married for 10 years and I am still head over heels in love with my wife. I would not change anything. For reference, there were 23 years between my first love and my wife. Story 104. Yes, but not in a positive light. My spouse is the best thing that happened to me, and my first marriage would have led me down a dark path. No regrets. All parts of life lead you to where you are now. What I thought was the worst thing that happened to me ended up being the best. Story 105. She was cute, sweet, and fun, but not what I needed or wanted within a year or two. She would be different now as I am. Maybe we would have changed together like my wife and I have, or maybe we would have grown apart. Cannot know. I know that I truly loved her, and we made each other happy for a while. That knowledge is enough to think back fondly, even if not longingly. Story 106. Every partner before my wife, from casual fun to serious intent, had something that would not have been conducive to a happy long-term marriage. With a few, I could see both of us being content and loving each other, but not being in love. As much as I love seeing the kids when I get home from work, it is my wife I am most excited to see. Story 107. I have come to the conclusion that I am better off with my wife. Story 108. I cannot say never, but generally, first loves are pretty disappointing if we are being honest. There is a lot of figuring out to do the first time around. I think it is safe to say whoever your first love was, He will think of you at least one more time. However, it is likely to be about the bad things and how he is glad it did not go that way, with just a small sprinkle of a few happy moments. Story 109. Do I think about her sometimes? Yes. But she is no more perfect than anyone else. There were good things about her and our relationship, and things that were not good for either of us. I only see her on social media, and we are both happily married with children. I assume she is happy. If we had gotten together later, when we were more mature, maybe it would have worked out. But no, I do not think I should have married her instead. That would have been a different set of problems, and frankly, we were both too young. Story 110. No. I care about previous partners and hope they are living good lives, but they do not really come to mind spontaneously. Story 111. The first woman I loved is a great person. However, the time when she was ready for a serious relationship and the time I was ready were different. It felt as if we were born 300 years apart, which I find somewhat tragic. Story 112. Interesting, I was just thinking about this today. We watched an episode of Kim's Convenience where a former lover visits the store. I find that I think about past partners from time to time. Usually it's a fond memory, good times laughing, or a fun day. Beyond that, it makes me really grateful for the person I married. It is fun to reminisce about youth and even catch up with a former flame. Sparks might fly a bit and there are lots of warm feelings, but it's really about being happy for the journey and happy with where it took me. Also, for what it's worth, my past partners ranged from very religious to atheist. Neither was a good fit. Instead, I found someone with the same core beliefs and essentially a love and empathy for all people. I know that sounds corny. I suppose when I imagine how it would be different, I don't see myself happy long-term in those other paths. It is worthwhile to be cautious in a relationship where you feel you are stretching your beliefs to meet theirs. It is important to be on the same page and able to talk about it freely. Story 113. My first love was in high school, and she was pregnant with someone else's child within 6 months of graduating. She was working as a salesperson at a phone kiosk. I have no idea what happened to her after that, but I hope she is doing okay. I have absolutely no desire to dwell on the what if. Story 114. I still feel the pain and sorrow I felt when I lost my first love. She was everything I wanted in life at the time. I still think about her and how things would be different if I got another chance. I know exactly what I would have done differently. However, if it had not been for our breakup, I would never have seen the faults that I have. Seeing them taught me how to be the man I am today. Now I am with the best woman I never asked for. The woman I am with now is everything I needed, and I did not realize it until recently. Now I have a new reason to keep living. Story 115. I am married to my first woman and love. I do not recommend it, to be honest, and based on the comments in this post, most others would not be with their first. Story 116. I think about it. I think about a lot of what-ifs, and I think most humans do. Most, if not all, of the what if I had done end up being disappointing. None of them are better than what I have now. So yes, but not perhaps in the way original poster intended. Story 117. She cheated. You bringing this up is the first time I've thought of her in a while. Story 118. Yes, sometimes. It is purely curiosity without any longing. I love my life and my wife, and it has been ages since I cared about my first as anything more than a friend. Story 119. No, the past is the past, and ruminating about past dating decisions does not do anything constructive. Story 120. Not really. She was cool and all, but I never thought about a life with her. Story 121. Everything would be different for sure. It would probably be bad. Right now, things are great. I got lucky with my current and previous experiences. Story 122. No, I am very happy with whom I married. I know that if I had married any of the women I loved before my wife, I would be less happy at best. More likely, I would be divorced or miserable. Story 123. No. I won the lottery when I was introduced to my wife. All the women before her helped shape me into the man she was interested in. They played their roles, but their time came and went. Story 124. No. She was a disaster. I have no idea if she still is. but I wish her the best with anyone else. Story 125. Oh God, no. My first love was very attractive, but she was and is a pathological liar. My life would have been miserable. My wife is literally the best person I know. I would not change her for anyone. Story 126. Dodged a bullet. Never been happier. Not going to ruin it by thinking about the past. Story 127. If she appeared on my feed, it is rather thank goodness. Story 128. Not technically married yet, but no. The only time I think of her is if she posts something on social media or if a conversation randomly mentions her. The only thought I have at that time is something like, she bought a new car. Okay, cool. Or, we went on a date there one summer. Just a thought. Without any feeling, regret, or anything really. I don't know how life would be if I stayed with her, and I don't really care. I don't hate her or think she's bad or anything like that. It's just something that happened in the past. I know I'm very happy with where I am right now. I love my girl and wouldn't change anything. That's it. Story 129. All the time, I think of my many loves and am grateful for my current love. Story 130. I think about how different their lives could have been if I had not met them. A couple of them had their lives changed because I was in them. Story 131. Well, my first love is a man, but yes, I think about him all the time. It is so lame and cliché, but I really do consider him the one that got away. I have never felt the same with anyone else. Story 132. Sometimes I feel uncertain, but then I think of my children and am grateful that things turned out the way they did. Story 133. No, not at all. I have not thought about rekindling anything with the women from my past. My current girlfriend was my ex at one point, and I've had opportunities to return to all of my previous relationships before my current one, but I never wanted to. I have what I want now and would not change it, so there is really no point in looking or thinking back. Story 134. It could never be her. It just could not. She is great and all, but she is nothing compared to my one and only. Story 135. Yeah, my ex probably would have stabbed me by now. Guaranteed. Story 136. Sometimes, but only with reminiscing, not with what if. Life doesn't work that way. She is in her second marriage and is childless. And I have many children whom I love. Story 137. I often think of her and how life could have been. I always end up knowing that I would not have met my first and only wife, with whom we have 3 beautiful children and their children as well. My life would have been very different, but I would still have been as sick as I have been. However, I would not have had the love and support from my family to get through it. Who knows what she would have done or whether I would have made it through. I am thankful every day and love my wife completely, even though she does not believe it. Story 138. No, not really. My wife and I are very happy, and my first love seems very happy with her husband. We were ultimately incompatible but are very compatible with the people we are married to. We are still friends on social media and have messaged on birthdays, but we are purely friends now. She's a nice person, and her husband seems cool, although we've never met. I think it's perfectly normal to think about how different things could have been. But in my case, things worked out exactly as they should have. Story 139. I have thought about her a couple of times, but then I remember she cheated, and I am instantly happy that I have my wife. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.